You know what? Sometimes karma doesn't wait for tomorrow. Sometimes it shows up dressed in a business suit and carrying documents that can end your whole career in 30 minutes. Let me tell you about Jasmine Carter and what happened when she decided to judge a book by its cover at Metropolitan Trust Bank. Picture this. It's a Friday afternoon, and Dr. Antonio Rodriguez walks into the bank wearing a simple black hoodie and jeans. In his hands, a briefcase containing $900,000 in cash from his chain of successful food trucks and restaurants. What should have been a routine business deposit turned into the most expensive mistake in banking history. Jasmine took one look at Antonio's casual clothes and dark skin, and her brain went straight to the worst possible assumption. Without asking a single question, without checking his identification properly, she made a decision that would haunt her forever. "We don't handle that kind of money here," Jasmine announced, her voice dripping with disgust as she gestured toward the cash like it was contaminated. The entire lobby went silent. Other customers turned to stare. That's when things got really ugly. Antonio placed his business license and tax documents on the counter. "This is revenue from my restaurant business. Everything's documented and legal." But Jasmine wasn't hearing it. She picked up his papers like they were garbage and threw them back at him. Then, in a move that would be replayed thousands of times on social media, she swept his money off the counter. $900,000 scattered across the marble floor like confetti. "Take your drug money and get out," she said, actually stepping on some of the bills with her designer heels. Now here's where the story gets interesting. Antonio didn't scream. He didn't threaten anyone. He didn't even raise his voice. He just quietly knelt down and started collecting his money, one bill at a time, while maintaining eye contact with the woman who had just made the biggest mistake of her professional life. You see, sitting in the corner was Destiny Williams, a college student who'd come to deposit her work-study paycheck. She was streaming live on Instagram to her friends when this whole thing went down. What started as a casual live stream with maybe 40 viewers was about to become viral gold. "Y'all, this is insane," Destiny whispered to her camera. "This bank teller just threw this man's money on the floor and called it drug money. Like actual cash money scattered everywhere. And she's stepping on it like it's trash." The viewer count started climbing. 50 viewers. Then 100. Then 300. The comments were exploding with outrage. "This is straight racism. Someone needs to call the news. This man is way too calm for someone being humiliated like this." Branch manager Richard Stone watched the whole thing from his glass office, but didn't move. He was too busy playing solitaire on his computer to care about what his employees were doing to customers. "Big mistake, Richard. Huge mistake." Security guard Mike Torres positioned himself behind Antonio, hand on his radio like this successful businessman was some kind of threat. "Sir, you're going to need to leave," Mike said, though his voice lacked conviction. Something about Antonio's calm composure felt off for someone who'd just been publicly humiliated. "I just need to make one phone call first," Antonio said quietly, pulling out what looked like a high-end business phone. The screen was larger than normal, with what appeared to be some kind of corporate logo as the wallpaper. "You can make calls outside," Jasmine snapped. "We're closing soon. This will just take a moment." That's when Antonio did something that changed everything. He dialed a number and put the phone on speaker. "Hello, Jennifer. It's Antonio Rodriguez." A professional woman's voice responded, crisp and authoritative. "Antonio, I wasn't expecting to hear from you today. Is everything all right? We need to accelerate the timeline on that acquisition we discussed." Jasmine's fingers stopped tapping on the counter. Richard looked up from his computer. The word acquisition hung in the air like smoke from a fired gun. "Which acquisition?" Jennifer asked. "The Metropolitan Trust deal? I thought we were waiting until next month's board meeting." Antonio glanced around the lobby, his eyes settling on Richard's pale face. "Change of circumstances. I want you to execute immediately." Destiny's viewer count hit 800. The comments were moving so fast she couldn't read them, but she caught fragments. "Did he just say acquisition? This dude is buying something? Oh snap, this is about to get crazy. That's a significant deviation from our planned schedule." Jennifer's voice carried legal authority through the speaker. "Are you certain about this decision?" "Completely certain. Antonio replied, never taking his eyes off Jasmine. Cultural incompatibility issues have surfaced that make this institution unsuitable for our standards. Richard stepped forward, his voice cracking. Sir, I think there might be some confusion here. Antonio held up his hand. Jennifer, I'll call you back in 5 minutes with final instructions. He ended the call. The lobby fell completely silent except for Destiny's whispered commentary to her growing audience. Y'all, I think this man just said he's buying this bank. This is getting weird. Richard's phone started buzzing, then ringing. The caller ID showed Board Chairman Urgent. His hands were shaking as he answered. Hello, Mr. Patterson? Richard, what the hell is happening at your branch? My phone is exploding with calls about some incident going viral on social media. Something about discriminatory practices and a potential lawsuit. Richard looked at Antonio, then at Destiny's camera still broadcasting to hundreds of viewers, then at the money still scattered on the floor. Sir, there's been a misunderstanding with a customer. Fix it. Now, before this becomes a regulatory nightmare and costs us millions. The line went dead. Antonio reached into his briefcase and pulled out a business card. Not from a wallet or card holder, but from a dedicated compartment with his initials embossed in gold. He placed it deliberately on the counter where his money had been scattered. The card was heavy stock paper with embossed lettering that caught the fluorescent lights. Destiny zoomed her camera in, and her stream now showed over 1,000 viewers. She read aloud. Dr. Antonio Rodriguez, Chief Executive Officer, Southwest Financial Holdings. The lobby went dead silent. Not movie silent, real silence. The kind that happens when human brains stop processing information normally. Jasmine stared at the card like it was written in a foreign language. Richard's mouth opened, but no sound came out. Mike's hand fell completely away from his radio. Destiny's voice cracked with realization. Oh my God, y'all. This man OWNS banks. Antonio pulled out his tablet. Not a consumer device, but a business-grade tablet with corporate applications. The screen displayed a dashboard showing financial data in real time. SFH portfolio overview filled the top of the screen. 63 branch locations. Asset values. Revenue streams. And at the bottom, highlighted in yellow, Metropolitan Trust Bank, pending acquisition. $1.2 billion approved. Richard saw it first. His knees buckled slightly. That's us. That's our bank. You're buying us? Jasmine whispered. Antonio tilted the tablet so Destiny's camera could capture the screen clearly. Her audience could now see documented proof of what they'd been guessing in the comments. Was buying you, Antonio corrected. Past tense. Richard's phone erupted with more calls. Board members. Regional directors. Compliance officers. He let them all ring. Mr. Rodriguez, Richard stammered. There's been a terrible misunderstanding. No misunderstanding, Antonio said, his voice still conversational. Your employee called my legitimate business revenue drug money. She threw nearly $1 million on the floor and stepped on it. You supported her actions. This interaction has been documented by. He glanced at Destiny's phone. 1,500 witnesses and counting. Destiny's comment section was moving too fast to read, but fragments were visible. Holy Bank CEO getting discriminated against. This is about to be legendary. Jasmine's getting fired. Sir, Mr. Rodriguez. Jasmine found her voice, though it shook badly. I didn't know who you were. You didn't know because you decided based on appearance, Antonio replied. You saw a Latino man in casual clothes and assumed criminality. That assumption just cost your bank a $1.2 billion acquisition. The number hit like a physical blow. Jasmine's face went white. Richard grabbed the counter with both hands. More importantly, Antonio continued, it revealed institutional bias that makes this organization unsuitable for partnership with Southwest Financial Holdings. Richard's phone rang again. This time the caller ID showed Patricia Martinez, board chairman. He answered on speaker, his hands shaking too badly to hold the phone properly. Richard, this is Patricia. I'm getting reports of a viral video involving discriminatory practices at your branch. Please tell me this is not what it appears to be. Richard looked at Antonio, then at the tablet still displaying SFH's acquisition documents, then at Destiny's camera broadcasting to thousands. Patricia, there's been an incident with a customer who turns out to be the CEO of the company that was acquiring us, Antonio finished calmly. Was acquiring. That deal is now terminated due to cultural incompatibility. Silence on the phone. Then Patricia's voice, tight with controlled panic. Mr. Rodriguez, is that you on the line? Yes, ma'am. On behalf of Metropolitan Trust's board, I deeply apologize for any disrespectful treatment you received from our staff. The apology should come from your staff, Antonio said. But first, we need to discuss how this incident reflects your institution's training, policies, and corporate culture. Destiny's viewer count reached 2,000. Her phone battery was at 15%, but she didn't dare stop recording. This was the biggest story she'd ever stumbled into. Jasmine slumped against her teller station. The mathematical reality was crushing. Her assumption had cost the bank over $1 billion and likely hundreds of jobs. Mr. Rodriguez, Richard tried once more. Surely we can work through this misunderstanding. Antonio closed his tablet and returned it to his briefcase. Richard, there's no misunderstanding. Your employee's behavior was recorded by multiple witnesses and broadcast live. The evidence is crystal clear. He picked up his business card from the counter. However, I'm not interested in destroying careers or institutions. I'm interested in systematic change. And that conversation starts right now. Destiny whispered to her audience. Y'all, I don't think this story is over. I think it's just beginning. Antonio opened his briefcase with the methodical precision of someone conducting a board meeting. Inside, organized in labeled sections, were acquisition documents that Richard now realized had been intended for his bank. Metropolitan Trust Bank, Incorporated, April 3, 1992. Antonio began reading from comprehensive financial statements. Annual gross revenue, $68.4 million. Net profit margin, 7.2%. Current market share of regional deposits, 3.8%. Employee count, 189 full-time, 93 part-time. He placed the documents on the counter where Jasmine had scattered his money 20 minutes earlier. The irony wasn't lost on anyone present. My company's acquisition budget for this quarter alone, $3.7 billion. Your entire institution represents less than 3% of our available capital. We acquire banks your size as routine quarterly activities. Richard's phone continued buzzing with calls from board members and media outlets who had caught wind of the viral situation. He didn't dare answer with Antonio standing 3 feet away. Mr. Rodriguez, Richard attempted, sweat visible on his forehead. Surely there's a way to salvage this situation. We can make this right. Antonio pulled out a second set of documents, these marked with official federal seals. California Banking Code, Title 4B, Section 18. Financial institutions engaging in documented discriminatory practices forfeit regulatory protections during acquisition proceedings and face immediate FDIC review status. The legal citation hit Richard like cold water. His banking background told him exactly what that meant. You're saying we lose our legal protections during mergers? I'm saying your discriminatory behavior today, documented on social media and witnessed by over 2,000 people in real time, creates liability exposure that makes acquisition financially inadvisable for any responsible institution. Jasmine had been silent, pressed against the wall like she could disappear into it, but now found her voice. It was just a misunderstanding. The situation looked suspicious to me. Walk me through your exact thought process, Antonio said, his tone clinical and precise, like someone conducting a deposition. What specifically made you think my legitimate business deposit was suspicious? Silence filled the marble lobby like concrete setting. Destiny's camera captured Jasmine's face as the question hung in the air. You were dressed casually, and the cash amount was unusually large for individual deposits, and the small bills seemed. And my ethnicity? Antonio interrupted. Did my race factor into your assessment? More silence. The kind that screams louder than words. Federal Community Reinvestment Act violations carry mandatory penalties of $75,000 per day from the date of documented incident until complete resolution. Antonio continued with devastating precision. Your current cash reserves, according to last quarter's FDIC filing, $3.4 million. Richard did the math in his head, his face going from pale to gray. That would be 45 days before complete insolvency. 45 days exactly, assuming no additional penalties for related violations we might discover during mandatory review. Antonio reached into his briefcase again, producing a specialized tablet different from the first device. This one displayed official government interfaces with real-time regulatory connections. This device connects directly to Federal Deposit Insurance Corporation oversight systems, he explained, angling the screen toward Destiny's camera so her 2,500 viewers could see the official FDIC seal and authenticated login credentials. One call to this specific department triggers immediate comprehensive review of all transactions, policies, training protocols, and customer interaction records for the past 36 months. Would you like to see your institution's current compliance score before I make that call? Richard's voice came out as barely a whisper. We've had some training gaps recently due to budget constraints. Budget constraints, Antonio nodded slowly, his tone conveying disappointment rather than anger. Interesting priority choice. You can afford imported marble floors, designer furniture, premium location rent, executive salaries, but not comprehensive bias training for staff who handle public funds and serve diverse communities. Mike Torres, who had been silent throughout the escalation, finally spoke. Mr. Rodriguez, in my 15 years of bank security, I've never seen anything like this situation. What you've seen, Mike, is institutional bias operating exactly as designed. Jasmine's reaction wasn't random. It was learned behavior reinforced by inadequate training and insufficient oversight. Patricia's increasingly desperate voice came through Richard's phone speaker. Richard, are you still there? I'm getting calls from news outlets. I need immediate status updates. Antonio gestured for Richard to answer, his movement carrying the authority of someone accustomed to directing conversations involving billions of dollars. Put her on speaker. This conversation concerns everyone. Richard's hand shook as he complied. Patricia, Mr. Rodriguez is here in the lobby, and the situation has become extremely complex. Mr. Rodriguez. Patricia's voice carried the controlled panic of someone whose career was imploding in real time while being broadcast live. Sir, I want to personally and professionally apologize for any disrespectful treatment you received from our staff. Patricia, your apology is noted and recorded by our current audience of 2,500 live witnesses. However, I'm significantly more interested in systematic solutions than individual contrition. Antonio opened to a specific page in his acquisition documents, one marked with red tabs indicating critical information. Your bank's primary credit facility, wire transfer capabilities, and electronic payment processing all run through Western Capital Systems. Are you familiar with that financial institution? Richard nodded slowly, professional dread building in his expression as understanding dawned. Western Capital Systems is a wholly owned subsidiary of Southwest Financial Holdings. We hold your essential credit lines, process your wire transfers, manage your ATM network infrastructure, and provide your electronic payment systems. Essentially, your day-to-day operational capacity depends entirely on my company's continued cooperation. The mathematical reality crushed down on everyone present like a physical weight. Jasmine leaned against the wall for support. Richard gripped his phone with white knuckles, understanding that his bank existed only at Antonio's discretion. Destiny whispered to her 3,000 viewers. Y'all, this man doesn't just own banks. He owns the infrastructure that makes banking possible for this entire region. Antonio pulled out a detailed regional banking map, spreading it across the counter with the care of a general planning strategy. Red dots marked SFH locations. Blue dots showed current partner institutions. Yellow dots indicated active acquisition targets. Green dots represented completed acquisitions from the past 18 months. Metropolitan Trust appeared as a single isolated blue dot surrounded by an overwhelming sea of red. 63 branches across 4 states, With 18 additional acquisitions completed in the past 2 years, Antonio explained, his finger tracing connections across the map. Your institution exists within our comprehensive ecosystem, whether your management team realized it or not. Every electronic transaction you process, every wire transfer you send, every ATM withdrawal your customers make, every credit card payment you facilitate. Our systems make it possible. Richard stared at the map like it was a terminal medical diagnosis. You could shut us down completely. I could terminate your operational capabilities within 72 hours, Antonio confirmed. But that would harm your customers and employees, most of whom had absolutely nothing to do with today's discriminatory incident.
I prefer SURGICL precision over wholesale devastation.
Jasmine finally found the courage to speak directly. What? What exactly do you want from us? What would make this right? Antonio looked directly at her for the first time since revealing his identity. His gaze was steady but not cruel. I want you to understand that your assumptions today didn't just insult me personally or professionally. They revealed deep institutional bias that affects every customer who doesn't fit your narrow profile of acceptable clientele. He pointed to Destiny, still live streaming despite her phone's critical battery warning. This young woman began documenting everything because she instinctively recognized injustice when she witnessed it occurring. 3,000 people are watching right now because discrimination resonates as fundamentally wrong, regardless of who experiences it. Antonio closed his briefcase, but deliberately left the financial documents spread across the counter like evidence in a courtroom. Here's exactly what happens next. I'm giving your institution one opportunity to demonstrate genuine, measurable commitment to systematic change. Richard leaned forward desperately. What do you need? Comprehensive training programs, new policies, complete staff restructuring. We can implement anything you recommend. Not recommendations, Antonio corrected. Requirements. Non-negotiable conditions for maintaining your essential operational relationships with all SFH subsidiaries. Patricia's voice crackled through the speaker with resigned desperation. Mr. Rodriguez, we formally accept whatever conditions you establish. Antonio smiled for the first time since entering the bank. This smile was different. It contained possibility rather than judgment, hope rather than condemnation. Excellent. Because genuine systemic change requires systematic implementation with measurable outcomes. And I have very specific requirements that will transform how this institution operates permanently. Antonio pulled a prepared document from his briefcase. Not financial statements this time, but a comprehensive reform protocol. The pages were professionally bound, suggesting this wasn't spontaneous revenge, but calculated institutional change. Jasmine Carter, Antonio said, addressing her directly. You're suspended immediately, pending full investigation of your customer interaction patterns over the past 36 months. Richard's phone rang before he could respond. The caller ID showed Regional Compliance Director. He answered on speaker. Richard, this is Maria Santos from Regional Compliance. We're receiving reports about discriminatory practices at your branch. I need you to suspend any employee involved immediately while we conduct a full review. Jasmine's legs gave out slightly. She leaned harder against the marble wall, understanding that her career was ending in real time, broadcast to thousands of witnesses. Maria, I'm here with Dr. Antonio Rodriguez from Southwest Financial Holdings, Richard replied. The suspension is already in progress. Dr. Rodriguez is there? Richard, do you understand the magnitude of this situation? Put me on speaker. Maria's voice carried the authority of someone who'd spent 25 years managing compliance disasters. Dr. Rodriguez, this is Maria Santos, Regional Compliance Director. I'm driving to your location immediately to personally oversee remediation efforts. That won't be necessary, Maria. I'm implementing comprehensive reform requirements right here, right now. Antonio opened his reform document to the first page. Destiny adjusted her camera angle to capture the text, her audience straining to read the details. First requirement: mandatory bias recognition training for all customer-facing staff. Not online modules or PowerPoint presentations. In-person facilitation with external diversity consultants, followed by quarterly reinforcement sessions. Richard nodded frantically. Absolutely. We can arrange that within 2 weeks. Not weeks, Antonio corrected. Days. 10 business days maximum. Second requirement. Customer dignity standards with measurable compliance metrics. Every interaction with customers carrying over $5,000 in cash will be recorded via body cameras, with footage reviewed monthly by third-party evaluators. Jasmine found her voice, desperation breaking through her shock. Body cameras? That seems excessive for banking. Jasmine, you threw my money on the floor and called it drug money. Body cameras seem like basic accountability, not excessive oversight. Destiny whispered to her audience. Y'all, he came prepared with an entire reform plan. This wasn't just about making a deposit. This was about changing the system. Patricia's voice crackled through Richard's speaker. Dr. Rodriguez, we accept all your requirements. What else do you need? Antonio flipped to the second page of his document. Third requirement, technology integration. I'm installing bias detection software in all 63 SFH locations. This system analyzes interaction patterns, identifies discriminatory treatment by demographic data, and flags disproportionate service delays or policy applications. He pulled out yet another tablet, this one displaying software interface screenshots. The system tracks average wait times, service quality scores, and transaction approval rates across customer demographics. Any statistical disparities trigger automatic management alerts and mandatory retraining. Richard stared at the screenshots. Does this software already exist? My company developed it after acquiring 4 banks with similar discrimination issues. Pattern recognition prevents individual bias from becoming institutional policy. Mike Walsh stepped forward. Dr. Rodriguez, I want to say something. Antonio nodded for him to continue. In 15 years of bank security, I've seen plenty of situations escalate. But you never raised your voice, never threatened anyone, never demanded anything unreasonable. You just let the truth speak for itself. Truth backed by evidence, Mike. Emotions fade, but documented facts create lasting change. Destiny's viewer count hit 4,000. Her comments section exploded with responses. This is how you handle discrimination, intelligence over anger. He's teaching a masterclass right now. This man is a legend. Antonio turned to the third page of his reform protocol. Fourth requirement, public accountability measures. This bank will publish quarterly diversity reports showing customer satisfaction scores by demographic categories. Reports will be posted on your website and submitted to local civil rights organizations for review. Richard's face went pale again. Public reports? Our competitors will see our internal metrics. Your competitors will see your commitment to equality. Unless you prefer they see viral videos of your staff discriminating against customers. Patricia's voice came through the speaker with resignation. We'll publish whatever reports you require. Dr. Rodriguez. Jasmine pushed herself off the wall, finding strength for one final attempt at salvaging her career. Dr. Rodriguez, I made a terrible mistake. I was wrong about you, wrong about the situation. Can't we find a way for me to learn from this and do better? Antonio studied her for a long moment. The lobby fell silent except for Destiny's whispered narration to her 4,500 viewers. Jasmine, this wasn't your first discriminatory interaction. The investigation will reveal patterns spanning months, possibly years. Customers who looked like me, dressed like me, spoke with accents, wore religious symbols, all subjected to enhanced scrutiny while others received standard service. Jasmine's mouth opened to protest, but no words came. However, Antonio continued, I'm not interested in destroying lives. I'm interested in education. Antonio flipped to the final page of his document. Jasmine, you'll participate in a 120-day intensive bias recognition program at company expense. Not as punishment, but as education. Upon completion, you'll speak at other financial institutions about unconscious bias and its real-world consequences. Richard looked stunned. You're giving her a second chance? I'm giving her an opportunity to transform a career-ending mistake into meaningful advocacy. People learn more from reformed discriminators than from perfect saints. Destiny's camera captured Jasmine's face as tears began forming in her eyes, not from shame, but from unexpected relief and the possibility of redemption. Antonio closed his reform document and returned it to his briefcase. These requirements take effect immediately. Compliance monitoring begins Monday through SFH's quality assurance systems. He pulled out his original deposit slip, the one from his attempted transaction 45 minutes earlier. I'll return next month to make my standard business deposit. Your response will determine whether our professional relationship continues, or whether this bank requires new management. Richard's hand shook as he accepted the deposit slip. Dr. Rodriguez, thank you for giving us this opportunity. Thank Destiny. Antonio nodded toward the young woman still live streaming. Her documentation made institutional change possible. Individual witnesses can be dismissed. 4,000 witnesses create accountability. Antonio straightened his hoodie, the same casual clothing that had triggered this entire confrontation, and picked up his briefcase. Real change happens when preparation meets opportunity. Today, your discrimination gave me the opportunity to implement systematic reform across an entire banking network. He walked toward the exit, then paused at the door. Richard, the next customer who enters this bank wearing casual clothes and carrying cash, treat them with the same respect you'd show someone in a three-piece suit. Not because they might be wealthy, but because they're human. Destiny's livestream showed 4,800 viewers as Antonio reached the door. Her battery was at 2%, but she managed one final comment. Y'all, I just watched one man change an entire system without raising his voice or threatening anyone. This is how you fight discrimination. With intelligence, evidence, and strategic action. The marble lobby fell silent as Dr. Antonio Rodriguez, CEO, reformer, and quiet revolutionary, walked out into the Los Angeles afternoon, leaving behind an institution that would never be the same. Metropolitan Trust Bank looked completely different 30 days later. Gone were the subtle barriers that had made certain customers feel unwelcome. In their place stood a transformed institution that had become a model for inclusive banking practices. Dr. Antonio Rodriguez walked through the same glass doors, wearing an identical hoodie and jeans that had triggered a discrimination scandal broadcast to thousands. But the atmosphere had transformed completely. Good afternoon, Dr. Rodriguez, called Tamara Washington, the new senior teller, a young black woman hired as part of the bank's diversity recruitment initiative. How can I assist you today? Antonio approached her station with the same leather briefcase, this time containing $600,000 in small bills from his restaurant and food truck operations. I'd like to make a business deposit. Absolutely. What type of business account are we working with today? No assumptions. No suspicious glances. No enhanced scrutiny. Just professional service delivered with genuine respect. The transaction took 12 minutes. Richard Thompson, still bank manager but now operating under monthly compliance reviews, personally processed the paperwork. His hands no longer shook when speaking with Antonio. Thank you for your business, Dr. Rodriguez. Is there anything else we can do for you today? Actually, yes. I'd like to speak with your bias training coordinator. That same afternoon, Destiny Patel stood outside Metropolitan Trust with her phone broadcasting to 18,000 followers. Her audience had exploded after the original viral video earned national news coverage. Okay, family, it's been exactly 30 days since that incredible situation went down right here. She began, her voice carrying the confidence of someone who'd accidentally become a civil rights documentarian. I'm about to go inside and see what changes actually happened. The comments flooded in. Still can't believe what we witnessed. Destiny became a real journalist that day. You documented history. She pushed through the glass doors, camera rolling. Carlos Mendez, the newly hired customer dignity advocate, approached Destiny immediately. His badge displayed the bank's updated motto. Every customer, equal respect. You must be Destiny, Carlos said warmly. Dr. Rodriguez told us you might visit. The entire staff wanted to thank you personally. Destiny's camera captured the lobby's subtle but significant changes. Multilingual welcome signs. Diverse staff behind every station. A mounted tablet displaying real-time customer satisfaction scores by demographic categories. Currently showing 4.9 out of 5 across all groups. This is incredible, Destiny whispered to her 18,000 viewers. They actually changed everything. In a surprising turn, Jasmine Mitchell appeared from the training room wearing a simple navy dress instead of her previous designer outfit. She approached Destiny and Antonio, who had finished his deposit. Destiny, Dr. Rodriguez, I wanted to speak with you both, Jasmine said, her voice carrying genuine humility. I've just completed the Intensive Bias Recognition program. Tomorrow, I start speaking at other banks about unconscious discrimination. Antonio nodded approvingly. How do you feel about that responsibility? Terrified and grateful, Jasmine replied honestly. I understand now that my assumptions weren't just wrong. They were harmful to every customer who didn't fit my narrow expectations. Destiny's live audience watched as Jasmine continued. I've learned that when you judge people by appearance, you don't just insult them. You deny yourself the chance to serve them properly. Richard joined the conversation carrying a folder of documents. Dr. Rodriguez, our monthly compliance report shows remarkable improvements. Customer satisfaction is up 41%. Complaints have dropped to 0. And we've had inquiries from 9 other regional banks requesting copies of our reform protocols. Antonio smiled. Systematic change creates systematic results. Destiny's viewer count hit 22,000 as people shared the stream. Her comments section exploded with reactions. This is how real change happens. Intelligence over anger always wins. Destiny changed the world by pressing record. Antonio addressed Destiny's camera directly. Today, we're announcing the Banking Dignity Initiative. $1.5 million dedicated to bias training across the financial industry, with partnerships across 15 civil rights organizations. He pulled out a professional announcement. Every month, mystery customers will test banks for discriminatory treatment. Results will be published publicly. Institutions that fail receive mandatory reform. Those that excel receive recognition. Carlos added, we're the first bank to volunteer for monthly testing. We want to prove that change is possible. Destiny turned her camera to selfie mode, addressing her audience directly. Y'all, when I walked into this bank 30 days ago, I had 600 followers and a work-study job. Today, I have 22,000 followers and 5 journalism internship offers. Her voice grew serious. But that's not the real win. The real win is that tomorrow, when another person walks into a bank looking different from what employees expect, they'll be treated with dignity instead of discrimination. Antonio straightened his hoodie one final time. Real power isn't about destruction or revenge. It's about using preparation, evidence, and strategic thinking to create lasting change. He looked directly into Destiny's camera. When someone discriminates against you, don't let anger drive your response. Document everything. Gather evidence. Think strategically. Then create change that helps everyone who comes after you. Jasmine stepped forward for her final comment. I was the villain in this story, but Dr. Rodriguez and Destiny gave me the chance to become an advocate instead of just a cautionary tale. Richard nodded. This bank is better now. Our customers are better served. Our staff is better trained. And our community benefits from the change. Change happens when preparation meets opportunity, Antonio concluded. Your voice matters. Your experience matters. And your documentation might be exactly what creates the breakthrough moment someone desperately needs. Destiny faced her camera for the final time. Have you experienced discrimination in banking, retail, or any service industry? Share your story in the comments below. If this inspires you, share it with someone who needs to see that quiet dignity can create powerful change. Hit that follow button to join 22,000 people who believe in turning challenges into opportunities. Remember, document everything. Stay calm. Think strategically. And never let anyone convince you that discrimination is acceptable, no matter how subtle. Subscribe for more accounts of ordinary people creating extraordinary change through intelligence, preparation, and persistence. Your story could be next. Your voice could create the change someone else desperately needs to see. The camera captured Antonio, Jasmine, Richard, Carlos and Destiny standing together in the marble lobby where discrimination had been transformed into systematic reform. Individual hatred had become institutional healing. One viral moment had created lasting change for thousands of future customers. Destiny's final whisper to her audience. This is what happens when one person decides to document injustice instead of just walking away. This is what happens when someone prepared meets someone's opportunity. And this is what happens when we choose intelligence over anger. The stream ended with Antonio's business card still visible on the counter. A reminder that sometimes the person you underestimate might be the very person who holds your future in their hands. 6 months later, the Banking Dignity Initiative had expanded to over 200 financial institutions across the Southwest. Antonio's systematic approach to combating discrimination had created a new industry standard. Destiny had parlayed her viral moment into a full scholarship at UCLA's journalism program. Her documentary series Banking While Black had won 3 student journalism awards and caught the attention of major news networks. But the real victory wasn't in the accolades or the career opportunities. It was in the hundreds of messages she received from people who'd experienced similar discrimination, but never had the platform to expose it. Your courage to keep filming when things got uncomfortable gave me the courage to file a complaint against my bank, wrote Maria from Phoenix. They settled for $50,000 and implemented new training protocols. I showed your video to my manager after I was treated poorly at a car dealership, shared James from Denver. Now they're reviewing all their sales practices. Antonio's companies had acquired 37 more financial institutions, each one implementing the same systematic reforms that had transformed Metropolitan Trust. The bias detection software had prevented over 300 documented cases of discriminatory treatment across the network. More importantly, it had created a culture where equality wasn't just a slogan on the wall. It was a measurable business practice with real consequences for violations. Jasmine had become one of the most sought-after speakers on unconscious bias in the financial industry. Her presentations weren't feel-good diversity theater. They were hard-hitting examinations of how prejudice costs institutions millions in lost revenue and legal exposure. I was that person who thought I wasn't racist because I had diverse friends, she would tell audiences of bank employees. But racism isn't just burning crosses and hate speech. It's the assumption that a Latino man in casual clothes can't possibly have legitimate business worth $900,000. Her speaking fees went directly into a scholarship fund for minority students pursuing business and finance degrees, a tangible way of transforming her mistake into opportunity for others. Richard had undergone his own transformation. The near collapse of his career had forced him to confront uncomfortable truths about his leadership style and institutional blind spots. Under the new compliance regime, Metropolitan Trust became the most diverse and inclusive bank in the region. Employee satisfaction surveys showed dramatic improvements across all demographic categories. Customer retention hit an all-time high. I learned that good intentions aren't enough, Richard would later reflect. You need systems, measurements, and accountability. You need to actively work against bias, not just hope it doesn't exist. Mike had requested transfer to the bank's new Community Outreach Security Program, a role focused on building trust between the institution and historically underserved communities. 15 years of seeing people as potential threats instead of valued customers, he admitted during his training. Dr. Rodriguez showed me that real security comes from creating an environment where everyone feels welcome and respected. He now conducted monthly community safety workshops, teaching local business owners about banking security, while ensuring they understood their rights as customers. The video had been viewed over 12 million times across all platforms. It spawned congressional hearings on discrimination in financial services, led to new federal regulations requiring bias training for bank employees, and inspired similar reform initiatives in retail, healthcare, and education. Dr. Sandra Williams, a civil rights attorney who testified before Congress about the case, summarized its significance. This incident demonstrated that individual acts of discrimination are symptoms of systematic institutional failures. Real change requires systematic solutions. For Antonio, the experience had been both validation and burden. The constant attention was exhausting, but the systematic changes made it worthwhile. I've been building wealth for 20 years, he reflected during a later interview. But that day in the bank, I realized wealth without dignity is meaningless. Now I'm building systems that ensure the next person who walks into a bank carrying cash won't face what I faced. His restaurant empire had expanded to 4 states, employing over 2,000 people with industry-leading diversity and inclusion programs. Every location displayed a simple sign: "All customers welcome. Respect is our standard." Destiny's journalism career had flourished beyond her wildest dreams, but she remained grounded in the lesson of that pivotal day. "People ask me if I knew I was documenting something historic," she would say during interviews. "I didn't. I just knew something was wrong, and I had the tool to capture it." That's what journalism is: being present when injustice happens and making sure the world sees it. Her final Instagram post about the incident, shared on the 1-year anniversary, received over 2 million views. "A year ago, I was a broke college student depositing a work-study check. Today, I'm starting my internship at 60 Minutes. But the real victory isn't my career. It's knowing that thousands of people have been treated better because we refuse to let discrimination happen in silence. Your phone is a weapon against injustice. Your voice matters. Your experience counts. And your willingness to speak up might be exactly what changes everything for someone else. Don't just witness history. Document it. Don't just experience change. Create it. This is what happens when ordinary people do extraordinary things. This is what happens when someone prepared meets someone's opportunity. And this is what happens when we choose courage over comfort." The story of Metropolitan Trust Bank became required reading in business schools across the country. Not as a cautionary tale about public relations disasters, but as a case study in how institutional change happens when individual courage meets systematic preparation. Antonio's final interview on the subject captured the essence of what had occurred. That day wasn't about revenge or destruction. It was about transformation. Every institution is 3 decisions away from either perpetuating injustice or creating equity. Every individual is 1 choice away from being a bystander or a changemaker. Destiny chose to document instead of ignore.
It chose preparation over improvisation.
Even Jasmine chose growth over defensiveness. Those choices created ripple effects that are still spreading. The question isn't whether discrimination exists, it does. The question is what you do when you witness it. Do you walk away, or do you start recording? Do you accept it, or do you document it? Do you enable it, or do you change it? Your answer to that question doesn't just define your character. It defines your legacy. The marble lobby of Metropolitan Trust Bank now displays a simple plaque near the entrance. In memory of injustices past and in commitment to equity future, every customer deserves dignity. Below it, a QR code links to Destiny's original livestream, a permanent reminder that individual actions can create institutional transformation when courage meets opportunity, when preparation meets the moment, and when ordinary people choose to do extraordinary things. The story ends, but the change continues. Because that's what real transformation looks like. Not a dramatic conclusion, but a sustained commitment to doing better, measuring progress, and ensuring that dignity isn't conditional on appearance, wealth, or assumptions. It's the story of how 1 woman's prejudice became 1 man's opportunity to create systematic change, documented by 1 student's courage to keep filming when things got uncomfortable. And it's proof that sometimes the most powerful revolutions happen quietly, methodically, and with a briefcase full of documentation that transforms individual incidents into institutional evolution. Comment Part 2.